throughout history, one crime which was dealt with incredibly serious was heresy or religious offences. This crime was punishable by being burnt at the stake, and one queen in particular who became known for this was Mary I, the eldest daughter of King Henry VIII. Mary would earn the nickname Bloody Mary for her actions in burning over 200 people at the stake inside of England during her short period on the throne. There was one skilled Bible translator whose work is preached inside of churches all across England and Britain today, but for this, John Rogers paid the ultimate price. He was someone who brought the word of the Bible to the people, and he was the first English Protestant to be executed as a heretic under Mary I, who sought to restore Roman Catholicism. Later, throughout her reign, the burnings would continue, but how did Mary burn her first victim at the stake? And to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. John Rogers was born in an area of Birmingham, and he was educated at a nearby school before he then attended Cambridge University. He became a priest and a rector of the Holy Trinity, the less church in the City of London. However, his calling would be in doing something more profound than being a priest, and in the year 1534, Rogers travelled to Antwerp, which was becoming a centre for people who were beginning to translate the Bible to English. Whilst here, he met William Tyndale, a very influential Bible translator, and under Tyndale's influence, Rogers turned his back on the Catholic faith and he married a local woman. Tyndale himself was executed in 1536 for heresy, and he was possibly the most influential Bible translator, and his translations were used for subsequent English editions of the Bible, but following his death, John Rogers pushed on with the translation of the Old Testament that Tyndale was working on, and Rogers was the first person, it's believed, to ever print a completed English Bible which was translated from Greek and Hebrew. The complete Bible was out under the pseudonym of Thomas Matthew in 1537 to protect John Rogers, and it was printed in Paris and Antwerp, and it then arrived in England. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, during Henry VIII's reign, allowed the king's most gracious license for the translation. But translating a Bible was incredibly dangerous, and it's believed that Rogers was one who assembled the Bible and then sorted it out for printing. He remained in Europe for some years, but in 1548 he then returned to England during the reign of the Protestant Edward VI, Henry VIII's son, and Rogers was given relative protection, and he became a celebrity inside of London. He was given a senior position at St Paul's Cathedral and was appointed the divinity lecturer. He, during his sermons, denounced the greed of courtiers and the Privy Council, and he also declined to wear priest vestments. However, the death of King Edward VI brought a huge amount of panic and terror for those Protestants inside of England, including Rogers, who was one of the most famous. When Mary I came onto the throne, she was an ardent Catholic, and she began to change the nation's religious back to Catholicism, declaring all Protestant services as heretical. John Rogers preached a sermon at Paul's Cross when Mary came onto the throne, and he warned about the influence of the Pope and Mary's religion. Further, defamatory leaflets were published and given out telling people to take up arms against the new Queen Mary I. They asked for nobles and gentlemen favouring the word of God to overthrow the detestable papists, the great devil Stephen Gardiner, the Bishop of Winchester, and the Queen. John Rogers, along with other leading bishops such as Hugh Latimer and Thomas Cranmer, were arrested and some were locked up inside the Tower of London. Queen Mary I wanted to stamp her authority on the country and restore worship to her religion, Catholicism, and with this many high-profile religious reformers were subjected to harrowing deaths. On the 16th of August 1553, Rogers was summoned to the Privy Council, and he was held under house arrest. He was later sent to Newgate Prison by the new Bishop of London, and he was locked up there for over a year. There were petitions which aimed to restore Rogers and release him, but Parliament and Mary I would have little mercy for him. Rogers was brought for examination in Bishop Stephen Gardiner's house, and he was then sentenced to death by the bishop for heretically denying the Catholic Church and the Church of Rome. John Rogers knew that he would have been put to death for his religious beliefs. He could have had the chance to flee upon Edward VI's death and head back to Europe, but he chose to remain in England and fight for his translated Bible and religious beliefs. He was locked up inside of Newgate Prison in London before his execution date arrived, and on the 4th of February 1555, John Rogers was taken out of his prison cell and was taken on the short walk to Smithfield, close to the Tower of London. It was a market day and thousands had gathered to attend the market, but also the execution and burning at the stake of one of the most influential religious leaders of the time. He was secured to the stake in front of the large crowd, and then people got to work setting fire to him. He would have been given the opportunity to recant his religious beliefs and return to the old faith. On account of the execution of John Rogers, it's claimed that Mr. Rogers replied that he might speak a few words with his wife before his burning, but that could not be obtained of him. When the time came that he should be brought out of Newgate to Smithfield, the place of his execution, Mr. Woodroof, one of the sheriffs, first came to Mr. Rogers and asked him if he would revoke his abominable doctrine and the evil opinion of the sacrament of the altar. Mr. Rogers answered, "That which I have preached I will seal with my blood." Then Mr. Woodroof said, "Thou art a heretic, thou shalt be known," quoth Mr. Rogers, "and the day of judgment." "Well," said Mr. Woodroof, "I will never pay for thee, but I will pray for you," said Mr. Rogers, and so was brought the same day, the 4th of February, by the sheriffs towards Smithfield, saying the Psalm Miserere by the way, all the people wonderfully rejoicing at his constancy, with great praises and thanks to God for the same. And there, in the presence of Mr. Rochester, comptroller of the Queen's household, Sir Richard Southwell, both the sheriffs, and a great number of people, he was burnt to ashes, washing his hands in the flame as he was burning. A little before his burning, his pardon was brought, if he would have recanted, but he utterly refused it. He was the first martyr of all the blessed company that suffered in Queen Mary's time, that gave the first adventure upon the fire. His wife and children, being 11 in number, 10 able to go, one sucking at her breast, met him by the way as he went towards Smithfield. This sorrowful sight of his own flesh and blood could nothing but move him, but that he constantly and cheerfully took his death with wonderful patience in the defiance and quarrel of the gospel of Christ. John Rogers was reduced to ashes that day at Smithfield, and he became the first person who was executed for his religious beliefs following the reign of Queen Mary I. Following him within the same week were the two men who were actually imprisoned alongside him. He was an influential Bible translator, and his work is remembered today in the Bibles within the Church in the whole of Britain. Mary I would not have succeeded in her restoration of Catholicism, as her reign was very short, and she would be succeeded by her Protestant sister Elizabeth I. But what she did do in a short period was burn a huge number of people at the stake, and they were subjected to a harrowing ordeal in front of huge crowds who flocked to see these barbaric executions. Thank you for watching, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching.